Greetings. So today I'm going to discuss Nietzsche a little bit and his ethics, whether or not there's a place for epistemology, metaphysics, truth within his ideas, and basically try to show he's not a nihilist actually, and he's certainly not amoral. This is sort of a good appetizer. It is not when truth is dirty, but when it is shallow, that the lover of knowledge is reluctant to step into its waters. So we could think of this metaphor, let's extend it a little bit, like there's a danger in jumping into clear water. If it's shallow, it's more dangerous than jumping into deep water that's, maybe not clean. So he's opposed to sort of the Puritanism of the church, the Puritanism of national identity at this time, German nationalism. But he's not opposed to all truth, all knowledge, all ethics. And so I want to read a selection on self-overcoming. It might take a while. I think I might just read it and then comment on it later. So it's the TLDR if you don't want to stay around for that. But I'm happy to answer your questions in the comments. This is a section called On Self-Overcoming from Book 2 of Thus Spoke Zarathustra. In this edition, it's on page 113. So about a third of the way through the piece. So here I will read it. Because I couldn't find it online, or at least a good version online. Will to truth. You who are wisest, call that which impels you and fills you with lust. A will to the thinkability of all beings. This I call your will. You want to make all being thinkable, for you doubt with well-founded suspicion that it is already thinkable. But it shall yield and bend for you. Thus your will wants it. It shall become smooth and serve the spirit as its mirror and reflection. This is your whole will, you who are wisest, a will to power. When you speak of good and evil, too, and of valuations, you still want to create the world before which you can kneel. That is your ultimate hope and intoxication. So he's using the term will to power here. It's a very important term within his philosophy, but I'll just go on for now. The unwise, of course, the people, they are like a river on which a bark drifts, and in the bark sit the valuations, solemn and muffled up. Your will and your valuations you have placed on the river of becoming. What the people believe to be good and evil, that betrays to me an ancient will to power. So this is sort of something we're going to get in the genealogy of morals, where the common people, they might tell you they're nice and kind, but they're secretly hiding this will to power with all their ethics. Whereas the people that Nietzsche's talking to they're more concerned with the river itself and navigating the river, not what's on this boat, this bark that's going down it. It was you who are wisest, who placed such guests in this bark and gave them pomp and proud names. You and your dominant will. Now the river carries your bark farther. It has to carry it. It avails nothing that the broken wave foams and angrily opposes the keel. Not the river is your danger and the end of your good and evil, you who are wisest, but that will itself, the will to power, the unexhausted, procreative will to life. But to make you understand my word concerning good and evil, I shall now say to you my word concerning life and the nature of all that is living. So this is getting more into his ethics and metaphysics. I pursued the living. I walked the widest and the narrowest paths, that I might know its nature. With 100-fold mirror I still caught its glance, when its mouth was closed, so that its eyes might speak to me, and its eyes spoke to me. But wherever I found the living, there I heard also the speech on obedience. Whatever lives obeys. And this passage is on self-overcoming. So there is a degree, obviously, with which the self has to submit. And this is the second point. He who cannot obey himself is commanded. That is the nature of the living. This, however, is the third point that I heard, that commanding is harder than obeying, and not only because he who commands must carry the burden of all who obey, and because this burden may easily crush him. An experiment and hazard appeared to me to be in all commanding, and whenever the living commands, it hazards itself. Indeed, even when it commands itself, it must still pay for its commanding. So in some ways it's easier to surrender your will to others. You don't have to decide which restaurant to go to with your friends. It must become the judge, the avenger, and the victim of its own law. How does this happen, I ask myself? What persuades the living to obey and command, and to practice obedience even when it commands? So there's some, you obey your superior officer, you also obey yourself, you don't give in to your fear. Hear then my word, you who are wisest. Test in all seriousness whether I have crawled into the very heart of life and into the very roots of its heart. Where I found the living, there I found will to power, and even in the will of those who serve I found the will to be master. That the weaker should serve the stronger, to that it is persuaded by its own will, which would be master over what is weaker still. This is the one pleasure it does not want to renounce, and as the smaller yields to the greater, that it may have pleasure and power over the smallest, thus even the greatest still yields, and for the sake of power risks life. That is the yielding of the greatest. It is hazard and danger and casting dice for death. So Julius Caesar crossing the Rubicon, Napoleon going into Russia. And where men make sacrifices and serve and cast amorous glances, there too is the will to be master. Along stealthy paths, the weaker steals into the castle and into the very heart of the more powerful, and there steals power. And this is emphasized, this paragraph. And life itself confided this secret to me. Behold, it is said, I am that which must always overcome itself. I am that which must always overcome myself. A constant renewal is the ethic, basis, metaphysics of Nietzsche. Indeed, you call it a will to procreate, or a drive to an end, to something higher, farther more manifold, but all this is one and one secret. Rather would I perish than forswear this, and verily, where there is perishing and a falling of leaves, behold, there life sacrifices itself for power. So the tree grows each year because it gives into the cycle of life. That I must be struggle and a becoming, and an end and an opposition to ends. End, opposition to ends. Again, this contradiction, you have to become constantly to be the best. Alas, whoever guesses what is my will should also guess on what crooked paths it must proceed. Again, this idea of not worrying about the dirty truth, worrying about the shallow truth. Whatever I create, and however much I love it, soon I must oppose it, and my love, thus my will wills it. And you too, lover of knowledge, are only a path and footprint of my will. Verily my will to power walks also on the heels of your will to truth. Indeed, the truth was not hit on by him who shot at it with the word of the will to existence. Merely existing is not really worth living for. That will does not exist, for what does not exist cannot will. But what is in existence, how could that still want existence? Only where there is life is there also will. Not will to life, but thus I teach you, will to power. So this may be a reference to Schopenhauer. I haven't read a lot of Schopenhauer, but he's kind of the pessimist. He's influential on Nietzsche early in his writing career, but he kind of grows to move past him because he wants to create a more dynamic way of living. There is much that life esteems more highly than life itself, but one of the esteeming itself speaks the will to power. Out of the esteeming itself speaks the will to power. Thus, life once taught me, and with this I shall yet solve the riddle of your heart, you who are wisest. Verily I say unto you, good and evil that are not transitory do not exist. There's even some practical truth to this, I think, because systems are constantly being overthrown, revolutions are happening, religious reforms, revivals. Driven on by themselves, they must overcome themselves again and again. With your values and words of good and evil, you do violence when you value. And this is your hidden love and the splendor and trembling and overflowing of your soul. But a more violent force and a new overcoming grow out of your values and break egg and egg shell. And whoever must be a creator in good and evil, truly he must first be an annihilator and break values. Thus, the highest evil belongs to the highest goodness, but this is creative. Let us speak of this, you who are wisest. Even if it be bad, silence is worse. All truths that are kept silent become poisonous. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. And may everything be broken that cannot brook our truths. There are yet many houses to be built. Thus spoke Zarathustra. So yeah, there's a lot there, obviously. I don't know that this is the first time he uses will to power. He certainly talked about the Übermensch earlier in Thus Spoke Zarathustra. He also talks about the last man, and I think this is really the exact opposite of the last man. The last man is someone who is already happy and already in decay. Whereas Nietzsche is the one, not Nietzsche, but Zarathustra in this case. Zarathustra, actually, I don't know that he even claims to be an Übermensch or someone who has overcome himself in this work. He's someone who's looking for them. He's constantly praising them, but not necessarily one himself. Just looking here, because we know we know the will to power also is heavily involved in the eternal return. So there's another passage here. I'm not sure which part. It's the serpent, the poisonous serpent. Maybe I'll save that for tomorrow. Or whenever I have time to do this. I'm on a summer break right now, so I have lots of time to do these, but that is obviously coming to an end, unfortunately. Well, maybe not unfortunately. Is it on the adder's bite? Oh, God. If you're still watching by now, I'm sure you forgive these pauses, because you have been very patient. Yeah, there is the scene where the shepherd bites the head. I'll look it on the adder's bite. Why not? I think it's later in the work, but this is page 69 for those of you who are a little bit degenerate. No, that's not it. No, that's not it. That's not it at all. But yes, so lest we mistake this for some sort of license to violence or war. I mean, I used Caesar and Napoleon, but we could also use the Buddha. We could use all sorts of figures, maybe Henry David Thoreau, these sorts of people who escape the conventions of their societies, create ethics of their own. I really want to find this, but I will look for it tonight or in the near future, because the eternal return is really the ultimate expression of this self-overcoming. So I hope you enjoy these, even if you don't. It's something fun for me to do. Yeah, so we'll get to that later. Again, this passage itself, self-overcoming, which I've neglected a little bit, is somewhat of a precursor to Beyond Good and Evil, and also the genealogy of morals. It's that even the weak try to control society by inventing the notions of the real world, or heaven, or the world of the forms, as Plato calls it. So yes, we have that. Here's the passage. Why not? Oh, can't see it. Yeah. So it's on self-overcoming, and this is probably, and life itself confided this secret to me. Behold, said, I am that which must always overcome itself. And this is, again, it's a secret revealing itself to Zarathustra. He's not saying he's the one who can command and obey. Actually, he kind of says the opposite. He says that he's sort of a niche product, that not everyone's going to obey him. I think this is the book he said for everyone and no one, Zarathustra. So I've gone 17 minutes. I hope most of you have already logged off, but here's saying goodbye to you. Cheers.